speak on this related subject. Now let us enjoy his guidance on the art of advocacy. But before that, I'd welcome our Honorable Professor Dr. S. Gopakumar to please welcome our reverend guest. Sir.
Thank you, Sundaram. Respected Chairman P.D. Patil sir, Secretary Somnath Patil sir, our Honorable Principal Ujjwala Shinde ma'am, our faculty members, students, ladies and gentlemen. There is no need of introduction about Ganesh Sonyavani sir, because sir already delivered a lecture yesterday in which sir very beautifully conveyed you what are the various areas where in which you can practice after completion of the legal, law course. So today, sir arranged a beautiful subject, that is art of advocacy, because basically a person who joined in law, he want to pursue legal profession. So whenever you join in legal profession, how you can develop your skill of advocacy, that is what sir is going to discuss with you. So as you know that the art of advocacy is not a glib or superficial exercise. It is the result of hard work, hours of hard work and research. As you know that if you want to argue for 15 minutes, you have to prepare minimum 3 hours. Then only you can at least argue 15 minutes. Obviously, sir is a senior most person, and you know that it is the duty of each and every senior member in the bar to guide the juniors. So, sir is, as I told you yesterday, I told you yesterday, sir is so much, what we can say, that concerned about the youngsters who come forward to join in the legal profession. I don't have any doubt that you will have a wonderful session of Ganesh Sonyavani sir today. So I welcome sir to this session on behalf of Dr. D.V. Patil Vidya Pratishthan Society, Dr. D.V. Patil Unitex Society's D.V. Patil Law College to start the session. Welcome sir. I welcome once again sir. You can start now the session, please sir.
So I think sir is on mute.
Please unmute yourself, sir. It is muted, I think, sir.
Yes. Good morning to everybody. This is our second interaction in the span of 48 hours. And today we are going to dwell on art of advocacy. It's a very delicate but equally important issue, or rather subject, or an area or a territory, I should say. And last time when we met, we had ended our session by saying that what you should read even when you are a student, even though you are not an LLB degree certificate holding person, you are not a lawyer in that sense, not entitled to practice immediately, but what kind of material you should have with you. And if you could recollect, I had told you that when I will be beginning today's lecture, I'll be showing you certain books only for the purpose of reference, which you must have to pass out your LLB. Once you pass out your Bar Council of India's examination, Maharashtra and Goa Bar Council gives you a sanad, what we call certificate of entitlement to practice anywhere. So if you could recollect, I had ended my topic by saying, apart from having all these substantive and procedural law books of CPC, CRPC and all that, so on and so forth, what you must have should also a civil manual, which will be completely controlling, or I should say, which will be completely covering all your civil related proceedings. Let them be a suit, let them be a miscellaneous application, let them be a revision, let them be an appeal, everything, whatever it is. And also this civil manual, same is also applicable equally in your other areas also, cooperative courts also, family courts also, industry and labor also, because these are all, anything that is not criminal proceeding is a civil proceeding, you can say in nutshell. Similarly, if you are going to practice on the criminal side, you must have with you this criminal manual, though this is a very bulky, it's almost 1500 pages, 1400 pages book. So you must also legal practice, that is first for you, there is no escape from this. Then I told you that necessarily the commentaries and all that, don't lock up your money. 1,500, 2,000, some don't have a simple one or two even briefs also for that matter. Then in that case, what you do that if you become a bar member of any bar council, I mean your local bar council, I should say local district court or even local level court, then you just go through this previous year annual digest. They're very, very important annual digest. So this is a all MR digest which covers this all MR publications, civil reporting of matters which are having January to December of last year, and all MR criminal is also there, and this is the admixture of the two. So whatever the verdicts that were passed from 1st Jan till 24th of December or so, because Christmas vacation, no court works. So this previous year's civil and criminal matters which are reflected in all MR, they have been compounded in this. So this you must have also, because this is essentially covering Bombay High Courts only and Supreme Court, no doubt about that. And apart from that, you must have also with you, I mean, you can have a recourse to this Supreme Court previous year's volumes. I mean, that you will come to know what type of judgments were laid, because ultimately Supreme Court judgment, they are having binding effect as if it is a law passed by the Parliament. So this efficacy of Supreme Court judgments is very, very high. Virtually they are binding in all high courts in India, all lower level courts. Sometimes it does happen if it is a high court level judgment other than Bombay High Court, then some of our judges are reluctant to accept. They say that bring it from our own Bombay High Court or bring it from the Supreme Court, any verdict, then I can think of your submissions and all that. Now, today what we are going to dwell is the art of advocacy. This art of advocacy, I have segmented it like this, that what role you have to play after becoming a lawyer, that role you can play before going to the court. I mean, a step of approaching the court, not before means in front of the judge. The aspects that are involved prior to the lodging of a proceeding or a litigation, I should say, civil or criminal or whatever it may be. And what you should do once you enter into the court by way of filing proceeding, or suppose your client has been impleaded and he has to answer the court, is a defendant, respondent, opponent, in that case, what you should do. But before doing that, let me tell you that being a lawyer, certain personal etiquette, certain personal individual feature or individual characteristics are also equally important. Mind well that unless your closest relation, your father or brother, sister, or your mother, I know some instances where the mothers are very good lawyers, so also their siblings, I mean son or daughter, they are also coming up. So such close family ties are there who are having good in practice, so automatically you are going to derive a good opening immediately, because someone close to your family is there already established in the profession, having good reputation, etc., etc. But if it is not, and you have to start from the scratch, then what you should do? Now mind well that I'll not dwell your time on how your appearance should be and all that. Everybody has to be neatly dressed, neat clothing, properly combed hair, good band. Never go with a dirty band that will give a very bad impression of you before the judge. Your black coat should not be having any smell or stink, something of that sort. That apart from this personal, what you are going to wear, your apparels, certain care you should also take, that you are just a profession. You can't claim to be an expert. You can't claim to be a well-established lawyer. It's just beginning for you. So be very patient in your behavior. I would ask you to talk less, but listen more. Always try to listen what two other advocates are arguing before the court, or even during the private conversation. If the court is not functioning, they are court is going to open up at 11 o'clock or post lunch at 2:45. Then what two rival advocates, they're discussing personally, they could be discussing some points about the matter or some other thing connected with the court functioning and all that. Just try to eavesdrop that. That will be also helpful for you what others are discussing. That apart, never send a message across the bar, I mean to the judge. that you are a very over smart guy or you are very fighter cock. You can't be a fighter cock unless you are well established for 5 to 10 years and you have derived a good reputation in the bar and public also. So don't be quarrelsome lawyer before the court. Otherwise, that will give you a very big setback in the initial stage itself. So be a very patient, be a very polite, be a very well-mannered lawyer. Just keep your eyes and ear open always. Talk less. The more you talk, sometimes you will be ruining the merits of your case. I'll just give some examples. There was a judge, session judge, very good session judge in Thane court, who was having a bail charge, and he used to say that let the lawyer consume 10 minutes and whatever he wants to bat, let him bat like fours and sixes, whatever he wants to do, let him do the batting as much as he wants for those 10 years, 10 minutes. The moment he exceeds 10 minutes, he completes 11 minutes, 12 minutes, 13 minutes, 15 minutes like that, then the chances of getting bail, because that becomes an irritation to the judge. Because he has to listen to other lawyers also, even your opposition. It's not that he's supposed to listen you only one, you being the person. So always keep in mind that every minute of a court, because the courts are functioning for barely 3 hours in the morning session, 2 hours, it's only 5 hours functioning, and sometimes the board exceeds even 100 numbers also. So the judge has to satisfy everybody, the judge has to devote the time, and especially in bail matters also, sometimes if you irritate, then even the chance of getting a bail, which is much brighter, just goes off, you just spoil it because of your over smartness or repeatedly mentioning the same points and all that, that will decrease or it will wane the chances of you getting a success. So don't incur upon the timing of the court whenever you're going to argue that later, that just mark yourself that these many minutes I have to finish my argument. Within those minutes, I have to I have to come across such points. I will have to convey the meaning of my client's defense or basis, whatever. So let there be a time frame for yourself for your own arguments. Then remember, apart from these manners, etiquettes and all that, these precautions, etc., when it comes to your real test as a lawyer, as I mentioned, you are required to do lot many things. Now, which type of cases will come across to you? Your clients will be having some civil dispute. It could be a monetary dispute. It could be recovery of loan. It could be a dispute between landlord and tenant. But these days, the landlord-tenant relationship is waning. A lot of societies are coming up, and the buildings, the arena of landlord-tenant cases has substantially decreased by now. Then it could be some contract-related matters, some builder-related issues, some cooperative society issue. It could be labor-related matter, whatever. N number of things are there on civil side. Matrimonial issues are also there. So whenever any client comes to you, who is your potential client, I won't use the word customer, it's a client. Customer is a commodity-related word. So he comes to you, he vents his grievances to you. Now he can come to you with his grievances, either who could be a potential plaintiff, I mean someone who wants to lodge a proceeding or a litigation, or he has already received some summons from the opposite party through the court or some notice of the opposite party, and he wants your advice for the purpose of answering the contents of that notice, whatever the accusations are there in that notice. So someone has come to you with some kind of grievance for which he seeks your legal advice. You are a law graduate. Your knowledge of law is obviously better than the layman who has come before you. So try to understand his grievance. Try to note down his grievance if you can. And then try to find out what the nature of grievance is, whether the matter is on commercial side, non-commercial side, personal side, family side, labor, industrial, school, cooperative, n number of areas. And if it is required by your client, that you have to take some initiative and give him justice. My word of advice, that once you sense that this is going to be a civil dispute, or sometimes a dispute can be of such a nature that apart from its civil nature, it can have criminal angle also, especially in matrimonial matters also, because a lady who has come to you with some kind of grievance of mental torture, physical harassment, economical deployment and all that, then she can come to you for divorce, so she wants you to file the divorce proceeding on the ground of cruelty or whatever the grounds are there under section 13. Or she wants you to file the DV proceeding also, because DV proceeding, though it is of civil nature, it is filed in the magistrate court. Or she has come to you with specific grievance that my husband and in-laws are harassing me and they are demanding a lot of money from me or kinds, etc., so that they will not torture me, then that becomes a 498 IPC. So that will have been criminal anger. So sometimes the client comes with such a kind of grievance that could have a civil side or civil plus criminal or civil plus DV side, something of that sort. Or sometimes people come to you with a case that check is bounced and opposite party did not honor my check. Then that becomes a negotiable instrument proceeding that you will be required to file in the criminal courts. So such man has come or woman has come, your potential client or litigant has come to you. So just listen to your grievances, try to ponder over grievances, and then decide what your possible solution would be. Whether it will be appropriate to directly rush to the court for venting that grievance, or it will be appropriate if you issue a notice to the opposite party, the rival party, against whom the person before you is having some grievances or complaints or whatever. I would advise you, if the litigation is going to be possible suit or possible litigation of any nature, it could be consumer also, cooperative, labor, whatever else, then always explore the possibility of sending the legal notice. Why? And by sending the legal notice, after taking appropriate instructions, at the fag end of the notice, you have to call upon the opposite party to do something, 1, 2, 3, 4, or you have to call upon the opposite party not to do something, or partially do something and partially not to do something. So you are asking the opposite party to comply with something that could be contractual obligation or something of that sort. The distinct advantage of sending a legal notice prior to the going to the court, rushing to the court and filing it. Advantage is this, that it becomes incumbent. I won't use the word mandatory. There's no such law which compels the opposite party to issue the reply if you receive notice from someone. It is your discretion. It is your chance you are taking to reply it or not to reply. But if you don't reply, if somebody sends you a legal notice and if you don't reply, then the allegation stands undenied, unrebutted, and it is as good as admitted. Not specifically admitted, but indirectly they are admitted because you have ample of opportunity to address or to reply those allegations against you, but you wave off by not replying it to it. That is one of the biggest mistake which our people do, because they just want to save the lawyer's fees and all that. Typical Indian mentality we are having, that why to go to a lawyer? Such type of thing they just ignore. Or some over smart people, they just have to Google something here and there, some formats here and there, and they try to reply on those. It's okay, but if you are going to deny the allegations or arguments in that notice, then it's fine. You are saving your money, lawyer's money. That's okay. But no notice should remain unreplied. If it remains unreplied, then the possible defendants, probable defendants lose quite a lot when the matter goes to the court. So when you send a notice, your notice should be in first place based on appropriate and all requisite instructions that have been taken. How to take instructions, that is a very different arena. Even for that, one will be required to conduct a webinar, because many times it does happen that we lawyers don't take adequate instructions. On the haphazard instructions, we just rush to file a suit, proceeding, criminal case, etc., etc. And then if you notice, if your client discloses you some more facts later on at later stage, sometimes they say that why to disclose this everything at this juncture, but that is not the case. You should disclose everything to your lawyer. If you are a litigant, if you are a client, you want to avail the legal services, you should open up your cards in all ways, in all possible ways. You should not hide anything, just like you can't afford to hide anything from your doctor. So reveal everything to your lawyer so that he can choose what is to be revealed, how it is to be revealed in the notice, how it should be reflected and all that, number one. So your notice after notice on behalf of your potential plaintiff or applicant It should be very exhaustive notice. Don't worry about the number of the pages and all that. How it will come, because your notice should serve as a foundation of your probable plaint of the suit. So your notice, my client states that, my client states that, and all that. When it is required to be converted, no doubt this is a era of cut and paste type of thing. Your my client will be replaced by applicant or the plaintiff, and you, wherever it is you is there, it will be replaced by defendant or the opponent, something of that sort. That apart. So your notice has to be very comprehensive, very elaborate, not to lose any point, because to amend it at a later stage will be very difficult. And if any such person who has received the notice comes to you to avail your legal services, it has been served.
1 second, sir. 1 second. 1 second, sir. Please.
Sir, you have been listening.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
Yeah. Supreme Court has come out with the judgment or ruling, I should say, that permits now to send the notice, or I should put it in this way, any such notice that has been sent by the WhatsApp mode, or new software we are having a substitute for WhatsApp, what is called Telegram or SMS, that is sufficient to constitute as a notice. But while sending such kind of notice, a parallel or simultaneous emailing of that notice is also made desirable by the Supreme Court. It's not mandatory. If somebody is not having email ID, it won't happen. If you are in a legal profession, you are at least supposed to have an email with you, and what at least your smartphone you are having, so that WhatsApp facility is there. So the sending of notice can be, now these days pandemic is not over, closure, unlocking is not there. So we are partly unlocked and partly locked. So only the postal services of that too, only speed post are operational. Whatever the dispatches are not taking place, unfortunately. So the sending of the notice is important. It can be by registered post, it can be by speed post, it can be by courier, it can be by WhatsApp, it can be by fax also, it can be by SMS also, and it can be by email. There are at least 6 to 7 modes are there by virtue of which you can send a notice to the opposite party. So the potential defendant has come to you with a notice which has been sent to him by the opposite party. It could be matrimonial matter, then could be life partner, husband or wife, whatever. Contractual, or it could be anything else. Then obviously that notice is supposedly, you should always draft. So it is easier. Your notice should always be having paragraph numbers. Why? Because if it is so, then the opposite party will find it easier to tackle your contentions or averments in your notice in para-wise manner. With reference to para number 3, my client stated that so and so. With reference to para number 8, my client so and so. So you make a habit of yourselves, if you are sending a notice on behalf of potential plaintiff applicant, then your entire notice should be in para-wise manner, and it should be, paragraph should be numbered, and also pages should also be numbered. Unfortunately, many of our typists, they neither give the page numbers when the computer facility is there, neither they give the paragraph. It becomes very difficult. Then we are required to say with reference to unnumbered paragraph number 1 and 2, like that. Anyway, that apart. So you have to take instructions pertaining to the allegations or contentions in the paragraphs. You have to take adequate instructions from your client. What is the real position? What has really transpired? What the potential plaintiffs is saying in that notice, whether it is based on some document, that document copy with your client or not, everything you have to take into account. Sometimes the clients are sometimes over smart. Let me tell you, let me caution you also. They are extremely over smart, and they don't want to disclose everything to their own lawyer from the initial stage itself. It does happen. It's my own experience. So you have, apart from your oral instructions, do you have anything to give to me in writing? Do you have any documentary evidence of what you are saying? Then he will come out. If many times it does happen that any such evidence that is not comfortable or compatible with his contentions, people try to hide it, and at the fag end or in the court, when the matter goes to the court, then all of a sudden they say that, sir, I was not able to test it initially, but now there is I have tested it. But by that time, you lose the opportunity of quoting your defense in response to your legal notice. So therefore, get the instructions from the client, insist for the documents which become the part of your defense while replying to that notice, and then somehow you are able to, in that case, adequately able to deal with the contentions of that matter. But at the fag end of that, your notice reply, mind well. Even if you are giving a notice, a reply to the municipal corporation notice, which alleges that your client has constructed something illegally, something that is beyond the sanction area, etc., anything, I mean, such authority has also given you the notice, individual has given you some notice. By virtue of that notice, you have been called upon to do something or not to do something. At the fag end, after completion of your all paragraphs, tackling all the paragraphs of the potential applicant or plaintiff's notice, you should finally say that for the aforesaid reasons, your notice is not tenable, number one, and I hereby call upon you on behalf of my client to withdraw the notice forthwith. If it is not possible to withdraw forthwith, give some time, 1 week, 2 weeks, or whatever it may be. But your notice reply must always end by calling the opposite party who has issued the notice to withdraw it. And in spite of this, another last para, in spite of this, if your client, because you are giving reply to the opposite party lawyer, if your client decides to file any such proceeding against my client, that is potential defendant, probable defendant I should say, in that he will be doing so at his own risk. All kinds of risks are involved as to the cost and consequences, because litigation ensues a lot of cost. Court fees are there. No doubt the defendant is not required to court fee unless there is a counterclaim in it. So such kind of replies to the notices should end up with a prayer or a request to withdraw it, and with a, I should say, sort of a, I won't call it, but kind of a enlightenment to the opposite party, sensitizing that if you don't withdraw and you decide to file any such proceeding, then you will be doing it at your own risk as to consequence thereof. Then the signature component will come of the, and always might well make a habit of obtaining the signature of your client even on the every page of the notice evidence, not just at the fag end where you are going to sign it. I will insist that you make a habit of taking signature. Maybe it could be initials on the other pages, except his full signature at the last page. But make a habit of his getting at least initials on each and every page. And even if it is reply also, you have to make the habit of same thing. So everything that has been sent through you as a lawyer, potential plaintiff lawyer or potential defendant's lawyer, everything is in knowledge, within the knowledge, whatever the averments you have made, that will be having a knowledge of the client. Tomorrow client should not say, that's hard, you have wrongly written this, and I had never asked you to incorporate something like this. So blah, blah, blah. That's the thing. So this is the advantage of issuance of notice when it comes to civil proceeding. Another advantage, that probable defense of the opposite party, if the matter goes to the court, you come to know, and in the reply, if the opposite party makes some allegations against you, the potential plaintiff, probable plaintiff, then you should always send a rejoinder to that. Otherwise, reply covers some allegations against the sender of the initial notice, and those allegations do not get denied, do not get rebutted, unchallenged, it becomes. Then that becomes indirect admission on the part of the probable plaintiff. So anything is there in black and white, allegation must be rebutted, it should be denied, and it should not be denial for the sake of denial, but denial should be also followed by what your legal position or what you have to say on the facts, on the point of law, if it is a limitation related, jurisdiction related, etc., etc. So this is our sum and substance of what the issuance of notice prior to the civil litigation and replying to such notice prior to the litigation. Now, similarly, in criminal, don't rush to file an FIR, if at all FIR is going to be entertained, or don't rush to file a private complaint if your grievance, you feel that something that has been done wrong by the opposite side constitutes an offense. It could be either under the IPC or it could be either under other minor laws. Then don't rush the going to the court and increase the pendency of this criminal private cases in the court. If you are able to go to police with a complaint, written complaint, what we call written complaint, and police are within their rights to inquire such written application filed by the aggrieved party. Mind where only in the defamation area and in the negotiable instrument act, these are the two areas where police have practically no say. They that do not fall within the jurisdiction of police at all. Number one. Now you are having a trouble with your neighbor who is abusing you, the neighbor is giving bad words to you, etc., or he is creating some obstruction by parking some vehicle where you normally park or where you pass by, etc., is creating something obstruction to you, or using bad words or sending some bad messages about you in WhatsApp and all that in the group and all that. So that could be a potential case of a defamation, but potential case of causing an insult to you also. The insult comes under section 323 of IPC, which is a non-cognizable offense. So anything that grievance which the client has come to you by saying that this amounts to criminal offense also, exclusively criminal offense or partly civil and partly criminal. Civil side you are taking care of, he wants you to take care of criminal grievance also. In that case, don't rush to the court and increase the court work of filing private grievances. By approaching the police station, police are duty bound to inquire into your application. They are duty bound to call the opposite party by issuance of notice under 160 of CRPC. Mind where this is very important provision as per some two judgments of Bombay High Court. And then they will hear that opposite party to you. Then they will see whether this amounts to an offense and all that. If they feel that this is a non-cognizable matter, then they will give one parchi. They will say that, look, Mr. A, you have given a grievance against B in black and white, but according to us, this does not constitute a cognizable offense. We can't take down an FIR, so you go to the court and lodge an appropriate complaint. That will be a private complaint under section 190 of CRPC. However, if your client's grievance is very serious, and according to you, that amounts to cognizable offense, in that case, you as a lawyer, you are duty bound to tell your client, or even you can physically go to the client, to the police station and insist the police to take down an FIR, which will be under section 154 of CRPC. Now mind well, that generally, even in police station also, you have to, when you go on behalf of somebody, go in well mannered. Don't try to do any bossing over the police, any dadagiri over the police. Be in the soft tone, because police, they feel that they are above the law. Even God can't even control them. Forget the judges also, with due respect to them. They feel that they are having some superpowers, something they have super immunity they are having, that nobody on this earth can control. That is the kind of mental setup they are having. They are the exclusive, bosses of themselves. So even in police station, you have to always approach the station house officer. No police inspector, senior police inspector will entertain you unless you go through some reference or acquaintances. So you have to go to a place called SHO, station house officer, in Marathi what we call Thane Amaldar. Thane Amaldar is something like it's a letterbox of the police station, I should say, because he receives all kinds of complaints, applications, messages, etc., etc. Then he accordingly gives it to the proper officers who are in the police station. So approach the Thane Amaldar, tell him that this is the grievance of my client, what should we do? Whether you are going to take a FIR or not. They may, if they feel that the matter is very serious, some body injuries are to be seen, those injuries are caused with weapon and all that. So 324, 325, 326 can be seen offenses by using some iron rod or something of that sort, blunt object or weapon or danda and all that. If it is serious, they have no option but to take an FIR. But it does happen sometimes in case of commercial transaction, when it comes to cheating, criminal breach of trust, or forgery related things. Then sometimes the police are hesitant. They might even ask you that give us in writing, black and white, your allegations with the Xerox copy of your contractual arrangements and all that. So we will go through it, and by law, by virtue of Police Manual Section 100, old Police Manual, and by virtue of Lalita Kumari Supreme Court judgment of 2014, police are within their rights to consume 72 hours, maximum I should say, for the purpose of inquiring into the nature of allegations. There is a celebrated judgment of Sudhir Vora of Bombay High Court that has given the procedure. Justice Khanvi, that was the bench. So they are duty bound to inquire into applications, criminal applications, if it is involving commercial things, body related physical injury, they have to take down an FIR if it is so serious. Merely slapping and causing abrasion, etc., it will be 310 only, it only NC. So FIR will be taken ultimately. Then you have to insist that give me the copy of that FIR. If every complainant who lodges an FIR or whose grievance is converted into an FIR, the police are duty bound to give him the copy of his FIR complaint. It is 154. And one copy of complaint, they are duty bound to send it to the magistrate, within whose jurisdiction that police station particularly comes. Then once the FIR is given, senior PI trusts the investigation of that crime to a particular officer who could be of any rank. I mean, depending upon the grievance of the nature of the offense. Even police naik, those who are having 2 strips over here, they are also permitted to carry out an investigation of thefts these days. So investigation will start. Then your client, on behalf of your client, you being the complainant's lawyer, you have to be in touch with the police authorities very nicely. You have to take comfort level of officers into account. It is not that he is only the investigation of your client's crime. He is having n number of crimes that have been given to him for investigation, for he has to compartmentalize the timing. So you have to be very patient, and ultimately once the investigation is over, charge sheet will be sent on behalf of police to the court. And mind well, if you are a complainant's client, lawyer, then your complainant is entitled to get the copy of the entire charge sheet. It does happen. I make a responsible statement. 99 of 100 police officers in any part of India, not just forget this, Thane, Mumbai, Pune, Maharashtra, entire part of India, they don't know that they are duty bound to spare one copy of the complete investigation, what we call charge sheet or a report under 173 of CRPC. In North India, it is called Chalan. That entire copy they have to preserve for the purpose of giving it to the complainant. And if the complainant is not satisfied about the manner in which the investigation has been done, the charge sheet or the report has been sent, and there are some judgment, I will not dwell on that because that is not my today's topic, then such kind of aggrieved complainant can very well dispute the filing of the charge sheet, the conclusions drawn by the police in it. If it is a Maramari matter, 4 or 5 persons are involved in that fight and all that, and police have filed charge sheet against only 3 persons by forgetting 2 and letting off 2 and 4, something like that, and only 135 has been charge sheeted, then such complainant has every right to challenge the charge sheet in the same magistrate court, and he can demand further investigation or the re-investigation, etc., depending upon the nature of lapses you are able to bring on the record of the court. So mind well, complainant has right to dispute the investigation. Not only that, Gangadhar Janardhan Matre's Supreme Court verdict even says that even a third person who has nothing to do with the matter, nothing to do with it. I'll give you an example. Dr. Subramaniam Swamy is not concerned with the manner in which Sunanda Pushkar died. She died in a hotel. She was supposedly poisoned, or she was killed by giving some injections and all that. He is not the complainant in that matter. He is not the witness in that matter. He is not anybody related with the matter. He is not a lawyer of any of the party. But he has disputed the conclusions drawn by the Delhi police. And he is fighting because Janardhan Gangadhar Matre's matter permits any person, because such crime is a crime against the society and not just that particular victim or the complainant. So that Gangadhar Janardhan Matre Supreme Court says any person can go and this is the charge sheet. In charge sheet, so many loops are there, and such person can challenge the conclusion drawn by the police, or any lapses are there, any loopholes are there. Such things can be pointed out to the court, and that concerned court will pass appropriate orders. So, charge sheet can be disputed by anybody, obviously by your client if he is going to be the complainant. Important thing to note. So this is all happening prior to the going to the court. Now suppose your client goes to the police station and he is asked to file NC. Police feel this is not a cognizable, we can't take FIR, you better go to the court and file private complaint. In that case, your client has no option but to go to court and file a private complaint. But he can invoke the provisions of 1563 of CRPC and seek a direction from the court to the police to take down now FIR. So that will be FIR in the same manner as if it had been entered first occasion, first instance. But this is a court directed FIR. It is in the same format, same procedure is involved and all that. Mind well, this is very important. So 1563 order, if you are able to get, well and good. Not, then court will pass order of 202, that is magistrate directed inquiry. That is called, in Mumbai used to call it at inquire and report, I&R case. So that is what we used to call in Bombay, I&R, investigate and report. So that is another area. If you're approaching to police has not been entertained by them, this is the mode by virtue of which you have to go to the court and agitate for seeking a direction for the police to record an FIR. So again, this is prior to the going of the court. Now let us come to again civil side. Your notice has gone, notice has been replied by the opposite party or its lawyer, and your client says that he's not complying with the demands that have been made by me in my notice, my requisitions and all that. He has denied his liability, etc., etc. That leaves him no option but to file a civil suit, or it could be appropriate proceeding. It could be complaint in the consumer court. It could be a marriage petition if the matter is pertaining to marital laws or family ties, etc. It could be concerning adoption. Then you will have to go to district court for the purpose of adjudication as a guardian or custody or whatever. So you go to the court as a plaintiff's lawyer, applicant's lawyer. We will take a separate webinar. What should be the contents of your plaint, application, petition, etc. That's a different story. But when you decide to file a proceeding, it could be civil suit, marriage petition, and all that. Three important characteristics you must take into account. First, under which law enactment you are going to file it. Your client's grievances are covered under the which enactment of the which law. On the top of that, which sections of that particular law are covered by your client's grievance. So you'll have to invoke the provisions of that law when you draft that particular suit or application or petition or complaint, whatever it is. In industrial courts, it is a complaint, though it's sort of civil proceeding ultimately. So you have to decide the laws and the sections that are involved in it. Then you have to decide before which forum your client is supposed to go. You can't directly advise client to go to senior division when the remedy is available under junior division, because senior division and junior division, the distinguishment is of the valuation. Senior division is having infinite CZZD. They are not, it was initially having to the best of my life 1 lakh. It has been enhanced to 5 lakhs. So anything above 5 lakhs, infinite jurisdiction, even 500 crores can be filed suit in the senior division. In Bombay, it is at city civil court. So you have to decide act and sections followed by the jurisdiction, and you have to ensure that you are approaching to the court within the limitation period or not. If you are not approaching within the limitation period, then your proceeding should also be accompanied by a delay condonation application. So this is all the checklist, what I can say. This is the checklist you have to say. Then you have to advise your client, taking into account the Maharashtra Court Fee Act schedule, what will be the court fee that is involved. So court fee, you can get the court fee stamps these days lockdown, our all printing presses were not working and all that. If somebody really wants to something in emergency, then there's a State Bank of India. All courts are attached with State Bank of India. So through particular code and all that, you can pay the court fees through Treasury, through the SBI and all that. So that it is as if it has been non-judicial stamps have been affixed on your plaint, and the matter is led before the court. Then the procedure is involved. Once you file the litigation, notices will be issued. I mean, summons, if it is a plaint, summons will be issued. If it is an application or a petition, then the notice will be issued to the opposite party. You'll have to give the copies of those petitions and the documents which you are relying upon to be annexed. That also be given to the opposite party through summons and notices. Then the opposite party, after receiving that, there will be some time given before so and so, on so and so date at so and so time, 11 o'clock. You have to appear either in person or through your duly appointed lawyer. Then opposite party will come through lawyer or in person also. If his regular lawyer is not available, he can file an application to seek a time to engage a lawyer, because if you have filed a suit against him, then he is having 30 days and 90 days limitations which are available for the purpose of filing the written statements. So opposite party will be addressing all your contentions in your plaint by way of written statement, which is supposedly, it is supposed to be in parawise manner with reference to the paragraph of your plaint. If it is MA application or petition, then they will be filing written statement or reply for that. If it is an injunction application, it will be having a reply by the opposite party. Then plaint opposed by the written statement or application opposed by the reply, that becomes for the judge, civil judge, AD or SD, whoever he is, to frame the issues. What are the issues involved in that? Then after the framing of the issues, you being the plaintiff, you'll have to lay the evidence on oath along with the original copies of the document. Then your evidence will be tested by the opposite party by way of cross-examination. Then your witnesses, if you want to examine in support of your case, normally in civil matters, hardly more than 2 or 3 witnesses, hardly, I mean, most of them it is one only. Witnesses are examined, then the defendant will be laying his evidence by way of evidence affidavit supported by the documents which you being the plaintiff's lawyer will be entitled to cross-examine. Then all the evidences on both sides are over. Both the sides will be giving what we call as a precipice, that our evidence is over. Of course, when plaintiff's evidence is over, he'll be giving a precipice, then only defendant evidence will start. So when the defendant closes his evidence, then the matter will go for the arguments. And well, when the matter is at argument stage, it is there at that juncture, you are required to come up with this such kind of digest where the case laws you are required to quote in your arguments, that as per the so and so verdict of Bombay High Court, Madras High Court, Supreme Court or the respective High Court has held like this, etc., etc. Then make a habit, because judges are having hundreds of matter, having different facts, different in situations, scenario and all that. So no judge, even if I would have been judge, I cannot compile or remember everything in my head. Always there are limitations. So make a habit of giving a written argument. Even if you conclude, lay before the court a written argument. If you are a plaintiff, you lay it yours. If you are a defendant lawyer, lay your defendant's written arguments. That will be very helpful for the judge to ponder over. And if you supply the copies of the judgments, you annex it to that, give the copy of that to the opposite party, so that even if the opposite party relies upon some judgments, he will be also giving the copy of that. Then it will be easier for the judge to ponder both the written arguments and the citations that are relied upon, and then he'll be delivering the verdict. So this is how the journey of a civil suit, which starts with the lodging of a plaint, ends up. Same procedure is for MA, same procedure is for the marriage petition also, and all type of civil litigations. Now, on the other hand, if you go for the criminal matters, if it is a FIR related matter, police will be filing it. Then on behalf of the complainant, it is the prosecutor. If it is a magisterial court, then it is the APP, Assistant Police Prosecutor, will be discharging his duties for the purpose of complaint, prosecution witnesses. If that matter is triable by the sessions court, then instead of assistant police prosecutor, it will be assistant public prosecutor. Public prosecutor, they are having director of prosecution. So he is discharging duties on behalf of. Now, there are so many judgments have come. Even a private lawyer can assist the APP, though he cannot physically participate in the proceeding. He can assist the APP to ensure that APP is taking all the proper steps while discharging his duties on behalf of the complainant. So only aid and assist the prosecution is permissible under the CRPC. But if it is anticipatory by the accused to save himself from the arrest in an FIR in which his name is reflected as an accused, in that case, if you happen to be the complainant's lawyer, then you are within your rights to file an application on behalf of the complainant, and you can oppose the grant of bail to the accused. Which bail? Anticipatory bail. Now the law has been so much developed, so it has been enhanced. Even in high courts, the complainant lawyers are permitted to dispute grant of bail in regular bail matters. I mean, post-arrest matters. It is not just pre-arrest, not just anticipatory matters, bail matters, but even post-arrest matters also. Lawyer on behalf of the complainant can file an intervention application and make up ground that for so and so reasons he should not be granted bail because he is having criminal record, he is of dubious nature, he can threaten the witnesses, he can abscond, he will evade the trial, blah, blah, blah. N number of things are there. For bail matters, it's a different story. For the trial purpose, it's a different story. And mind well, art of advocacy is something which you cannot master even in period of 5 years, unless you are having very sharp brain, sharp inclination towards to learn the law. And mind well, whether you be a civil lawyer or you be a criminal lawyer, your observation power has to be class. Therefore, I am saying you can enhance your observation power only if you keep your eyes and ear open. By reading the textbooks, reading the other commentaries and all that, your observation powers is not going to increase. Maybe by papers which I advocated the other day, that you must read the Hindu and you must read Indian Express and all that. That is for the enhancement of your legal knowledge. Or watch English TV channel debates. That is okay for the enhancement of knowledge. But observation is power is something which you have to develop on your own, increase on you, and that will definitely help you. It will more help you during the course of cross-examination, that too more so on the criminal side. The civil side cross-examination is having lot of restrictions or the limitations for the simple reason that you are a defendant's lawyer, and if you want to cross-examine the plaintiff, then apart, if at all your client, as I mentioned earlier, that in response to notice, you have replied to that notice. Then apart from the reply to that notice, judges will hardly permit you to allow such questions which are not been reflected in your defense in response to that notice. So your questions in the civil matters on behalf of the defendant will be virtually restricted to what he has said in response to that notice. In response, I mean, as a notice reply. And
हाँ करा जेवण काय देत हे नाही पण बटाटा कसा आहे ना त्याने वजन वाढतं आणि जे खायचं ना तेच खातो.
Yes, please. Now, in case of criminal trial, please mute. Okay. Am I audible? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. In case of criminal trials, if you are defending a criminal, I mean accused before the court of law, then I would use the word we have an oceanic opportunity to cross-examine the complainant. something that is not reflected in the charge sheet. It could be about the conduct of the complainant, witness, his past history, it's anything under the sun you can ask. Of course, some relevancy has to be there, some relevancy that will try to prove the innocence of your client because you are defending the accused. But the behavior or the past conduct of the complainant also, sometimes if there is any waiver is there, some kind of defense you are able to cite out in support of your client, that for the purpose of cross-examination in criminal trial, you are having ample of opportunities. You can swim like anything, but civil it is very, very restricted. So this is how your behavior should be when you are dealing with the criminal matters. And as I said in my previous first webinar, that at this juncture, students, some of you could be becoming a potential lawyer in 1 year's time, say, I mean, after next June, once the results are out and all that. So probably by next year, August, you could be potential lawyers. But utilize this 1 year period for visiting the courts, see the functioning of the court. Don't just see the functioning of civil courts or criminal courts for that matter. Go to the cooperative courts also, go to the consumer court also, go to the labor courts also, go to some any other fora, go to the RERA also, because real estate matters are very much the builders, some, for whatever reasons, the flat owners or the gala owners or shop owners, they get cheated or they don't get the possession in time, even if when they have paid the money and all that. Go to the DRTT, but I'm afraid your Pune DRT is closed as of now for want of judge. But that apart, whatever the legal fora are there, you have to visit them. Better go, once your lectures are over, go in the second half, see how do they function and all that, how the complaints are filed, how the proceedings are filed, litigations are filed, how after the filing of the litigation proceeding, how they are scrutinized, once they are okayed, once they are given only after cross-checking and all that, how it goes to the court for the first order. Then first order is very, very important. Go to the first order, that will decide the fate, in the sense that time what we call in criminal side taking the cognizance. In civil side nobody takes cognizance, but it takes a note of your grievance, and if the civil just says issue notice to the opposite party, issue summons if it is a plaint. And there you have to insist that if the court does not grant you a stay ex parte, then you have to argue with the court that why a short date be given, why the private service can also be allowed in this matter, taking into account the urgency that is involved. Somebody who has encouraged upon you, if you give him a delay, time period of 8 days to returnable, and by that time 8 days that construction will be over. That should not happen. So there you have to argue a lot of restraint and a lot of diligence. There should be a appropriate behavior. Otherwise, if you use extra words and all that, judge will not be sympathetic with you, and maybe you'll be losing the sympathy of the court. That should not happen. Make the habit of visiting the courts, and whatever the knowledge which you will gather by physically observing these courts, arguments by the judge, lawyers before them. If at all you are having a free time in the morning, by chance your lectures are in the afternoon, then go to the court and see the board of the court. The first matters which are listed in the board are for the arguments, or some of them could be for judgments. Judgment, after pronouncing them, you can't learn anything. But if it is for argument, and argument is yet to start by the plaintiff side, litigation side, someone who has lodged it, then you will be able to enjoy the both sides. You will learn quite a lot. Make a habit. Whatever the case laws that will be cited by them during the course of argument, you can note down. It could be AIR, it could be SSE, or it could be DCR or BLR, Maharashtra Law Journal, or whatever, Supreme Court cases. Make that habit. And once you are able to note that, then this is for your rescue. This Supreme Court Digest is also for your rescue. And these days, our technology has gone so advanced that on all these written publications, their equivalent software publications are available upon a payment of some charges, 10,000, 15,000, whatever it may be. But just with the tip of finger, you can get an access to the Supreme Court and High Court judgments. What is the latest position in that? Many law websites, Live Law In is the most popular in India. I mentioned about tilakmark.com also last occasion. So there are various resources are there. But what I would like to tell you, that if you want to improve the quality of your functioning as a lawyer, even before you draft the notice, you should conduct sufficient legal research. In the sense, what is the latest position on this particular issue, on this particular law point, laid down by the High Court or the Supreme Court, whatever it may be. So there has to be adequate. Just now, Professor said in the introductory remark, even for the 15 minutes argument, you have to prepare for 3 hours or so. I fully endorse with this submission that when you draft the proceeding or draft the written statement also, you must take into account many things into also be there, and that should reflect in your defense written statement, reply, or whatever it may be. And a lot of legal research is required before you embark upon this job. So this is how multifaceted and very challenging this profession is. But as I mentioned on the last occasion, there is a waiting period, gestation period of minimum 5 years. You should be able to sustain. You can have parallel earning also. You can do the typing also. You can, whatever this typing earning money will be saving by paying it to the typist. If you are able to type yourself, you will be saving that much money instead of paying to the typist who are sitting in the court. So as I said last occasion, develop the habit of the type on keyboard appropriately. So that will be saving your money. That could as good as earning your money. So this is how the art of advocacy is, and it cannot be just learned by any such book. There are many books are there of art of advocacy in the market. Amazon, if you go into Amazon, it can show a couple of books immediately. But to learn it from that books and to learn have a practical experience, there is a huge difference between the two. So this is how I will sum up my today's webinar too. Now, if there are any questions, let me see the group chat or whatever is reflected on that. Or if the moderator is going to ask me the questions on behalf of the participants, most welcome.
For Professor Vanida Moham, ask the question posed by the participant.
Ask question directly. Post it in the chat box.
Yes, you can ask.
Yes, sir. One question is that, dear sir, most of the lawyers suggested at lower court that not to submit at evidence, all evidence will suit to plaintiff. Discussion begin for hearing. So how practical is this? Please add.
No. This question has been asked by some Shankar Devkar,
Yes, sir.
LLB 2, if I mistake not. Is it correct? First of all, the stage of laying the evidence comes up on behalf of the plaintiff only after framing of the issues, number 1, and when court directs you to file the evidence affidavit. So what is evidence? It will be a documentary evidence or a pictorial evidence or some audible evidence or something else, video clipping perhaps. So all which you made in the evidence affidavit should be supported by these exhibits A, B, C, D, or what are the nomenclature which you may adopt or numbering wise. And such evidence you have to disclose it at the first instance itself. You cannot leave the evidence in patches. That is not permissible. Law never thinks so. And therefore, as I said, if your civil suit is going to be exhaustive or that your notice has to be exhaustive, then the civil suit which will be based on your notice as a foundation will be. And whatever the documents are there in support of your case, you should disclose it in the plaint itself. Maybe inadvertently in notice you might have forgotten to mention it, or at that time the documents were not accessible or available. But your plaint should reflect all the documents on which you are relying upon. So if somebody is having impression that the evidence can be given in patches and after the oral arguments are over and all that, no, that is a misconception. Please remove that. Next.
One more question. In girl court, how to which are to be played and on which basis?
I can't hear you.
In the
I
law,
could not-
sir, am I audible?
Yeah.
In lower courts, how the issues are to be played and on which basis?
Course.
Lower, in lower court, the issues are to be played
Please repeat. Let it be audible.
Yes, sir. Am I audible now?
Yeah, now audible. Definitely.
Question is that in lower court, how the issues are to be framed
Yes.
and which basis?
Yes. Very good. Every allegation or the contention made by the plaintiff in his plaint, if refuted by the defendant in his written statement or the reply, that becomes the issue. Now, the issue could be pertaining to the fact, or it could be pertaining to the law. Pertaining to the law, if the plaintiff says that matter is within the limitation, defendant will deny it is not within the limit, it is lapsed, then that will become an issue whether the suit is filed within the limitation period or not. Or if the property worth 5 crores, plaintiff have valued it at 1 crore, then the defendant will say that he has defrauded to the court by lowering the price by 4 crores and not paid the court fee on 4 crores. So the suit should be, he should be directed to appropriately value it first and appropriate court fee should be paid on that. But let me tell you, it is maximum 75,000 only, first of all. But pertaining to the facts could be about pertaining to the denial of the contractual relationship or the modalities of the contractual relationship, some incidents that have been quoted or not, especially in the matrimonial matter, the cruelty is one of the subjects, one of the grounds for seeking a divorce. Then the petitioner, whether he could be wife or husband, that apart, they will be leveling some allegations 1, 2, 3, 4. These allegations have been denied by the respondent, then the court will be required to frame the issues, whether the behavior of the respondent with regard to the complainant amounts to cruelty, or it amounts to desertion, or it amounts to adultery, or it amounts to bigamy, or whatever. What are the grounds are there by virtue of which the divorce is sought. So even if it is civil dispute, property related dispute, contractual obligation, every fact that is contended by the plaintiff, denied by the defendant, that becomes a part of the issue. So issues are required to be framed in the lower court itself. Trial court, that is what we call.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, next question is on arbitration.
Okay.
If the matter is in arbitration for 1 year as per the contract and we are not satisfied with the decision of the arbitration, can we challenge the same with the period within the period of that 1 year? We stated that the party will go for arbitration for the period of first year.
Yes, albeit arbitrary decision is always subject to judicial challenge. There is no bar. It's not that it is the final court. Instead of approaching the court physically, you are seeking the adjudication of the dispute through a private person. It could be a judge also, or it could be even private person also for that matter. Somebody who's an expert in engineering, or somebody who's an expert in technical side. Such person or commercial side, he could be appointed as an arbitrator for the resolution of dispute. Meanwhile, in our country, the concept of alternative dispute resolution is very, very at infancy stage, even if this concept is prevalent in Europe and in America for more than 2 decades. And not only that, they do the post-litigation ADR, they do also litigation ADR, because of which the filing of the cases, litigations is substantially reduced because the parties save their court fees by engaging ADR prior to the filing of the proceeding. So arbitration decision can very well be challenged. There is no dispute about that. Now somebody has mentioned now in the pandemic situation how we can file the suit and in which court will work, etc. etc. Now, depending upon the urgency that is involved in the matter, number one, and depending upon the limitation aspect. Now, it did happen. Now, this is somebody has used the word suit, but let me make a slight deviation. During this pandemic, in the initial lockdown, which was there till 1st of June, especially in 138 related matters, many parties could not deposit the checks. Those who deposited, they got the memo back saying that your check stands dishonored for 1, 2, 3, 4 reasons. But the parties could not issue the notices because the post department was closed, courier services were closed. No doubt the electronic media, email facility was very much there. And even if that had been issued, nobody could, and people were confused whether how do I file 138 criminal proceeding because courts are closed. So even if somebody is having civil grievance that is of such nature which you cannot afford to prolong, either the limitation will expire or the opposite party will complete a construction or do something that will make your very suit redundant. So in that case, you have to go to the court. You have to write a letter, application to the senior division judge, citing the urgency that if it is not accepted, the plaint and other papers, if it is not number and if no first order is passed on that, then my suit will become ruinous. It will be infructuous at a passage of time once the regular courts will be open. So there is no such bar in filing the proceeding, provided you are able to make out the urgency.
Thank you, sir. One more question by Sushil Sali from LLB third year. Sir, how can we lead the case when there is no evidence received or found at the time of evidence affidavit?
Then that will be only dry affidavit, I should say, because then what type of such suit can be? Number one, then it will be oral evidence or ocular evidence, whatever you have seen by air, but that is essentially all the criminal concepts are there. In civil suit, if you want to make out case, if you want to seek a civil relief, then at least it is presumed that some kind of documentation is there between you and him. Therefore, I am saying that if you have no evidence, that your can itself be your evidence. And if that notice has not been replied, then that goes in your favor. Sometimes it is possible. If there is no any photographic evidence, documentary evidence, prior communication personally between the parties, that's the thing.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. One
Yeah.
more from that Gajanan Pawar. He is the student of our college. If somebody file personal case against you, that is NC, how it
पास आएगा ABCD आणि वापरच्या
at the local police station for government.
बाकी मी कर दोन पहिले
Yes. It is a 506, it is amounts to basically threat. What we normally say, dekh ke lega, pav todenga, ye todenga, that type of threats that are given. I will see how you come in this area and all that, such kind of threats that are emanated, they are covered under 506, basically. So for that purpose, NC is filed in the police station, but police will only lodge the NC. Police are not supposed to conduct any investigation of the NC unless they obtain the permission from the court under 5 of CRPC. Mind well. So NC is lodged, then the person who lodges an NC must lodge a private complaint against you. Then that will go before the magistrate. Then the learned magistrate will decide whether I should take the cognizance of this or not, and I should direct 202 or I should direct 1563 or whatever, or I can even personally inquire into the matter. So such kind of all possibilities will be explored by the learned magistrate. But the person who is asking question, Mr. Pawar, whether it will affect the student's career. Now, how it will affect, I mean, that cannot be construed as a criminal record in that sense. Criminal record can be seen unless, I mean, that filing of a criminal proceeding results into the conviction. That is tantamount. Even if it had it been an FIR and it is in the honorable acquittal, then nothing is going to make you lose.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
One last question, I think that can we join the internship while in second year or third year of LLB? And question is continued that how much amount intern be paid by law firms?
No. These are, I mean, very sorry to say, there's no bar on when you should join internship. You can join it even when you are in the first year. If somebody is going to absorb you in his chamber or her chamber and going to pay you some traveling expenses and towards your food and refreshment and all that, that's well and good. But the question is this: what will be your utility at this juncture by absorbing you in chamber? Somebody comes to me even that I am in the third year, absorb you in your chamber. I can almost, at the most, send him for the purpose of going to the post office, going to Xerox shop, going to the courier office and all that. Apart from that, he will have very little knowledge of drafting. He will have very little, unless I can use him as a typist if he's having good typing knowledge. That's all. So suffice to say that There's no bar at which year you can join the senior. If somebody is willing to absorb, well and good. But I'm afraid as far as the money is concerned, because even if had you be completed LLB with your Sanad, and more so now after situation, one doesn't know how far you will be really paid in that. Even seniors are now worried that how much you will be deriving. So formally, if suppose we could dare to tell client that deposit 15,000 rupees if you want to file a suit, I wonder whether we can dare to tell him with the somebody is able to do the work at 3,000, so we'll go over there. Such is going to fierce competition now in post-pandemic situation. Are there any guidelines for filing of the FIRs by police? FIR is to be lodged at the place of the crime. No, place of the crime is in the jurisdiction of that police station in which the crime has taken place. Where are the disputes by police regarding their jurisdiction? Why there are disputes? Yeah, it does happen. But even if there is any dispute, mind well, that always zero number FIR can be taken. For instance, in Sushant Singh's matter, now CBI has entertained his father's FIR, entire incident of Sushant's death. Now, whether there is a natural death, whether it is a suicide, whether it is a murder death, is a different ballgame. But he has ultimately died in Mumbai. So, what is Mumbai police station, more so in Bandra where he has died, Mumbai police will be having jurisdiction. Patna has nothing to do. So, actually the Patna police, or they should have said that we will register your grievance, but we will ultimately dispatch your grievance, zero FIR, and let the Bombay court do whatever they want to do as per the law.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. No more questions, sir. Now I request Sundaram. Sundaram, you proceed now.
Any all dots are clear? Okay, fine. Can FIR be lodged by mail? Yes, by email also it can be lodged, but only for the purpose of signature.
Almost all questions are oversized.
Yeah.
So now we can wind it up. I consider it as a great privilege again to tell you a lot of thanks, sir. So it was a great session, and our students and all other participants are greatly delighted with your what we can say that presentation, and we have got an entire idea with respect to how a suit starts and how it ends, including the notice and all other filing of evidence, all other procedure, very nicely narrated. None other can do such a way for presentation. Thank you very much. I express my sincere gratitude on behalf of Dr. D.Y. Patil Law College, on behalf of principal and management and all faculty members and our students. So thank you, sir. Thank you. And we expect your cooperation further also, as you promised that you directly come in person and address our students.
Yes.
It will be a great opportunity for our students. You are always welcome, sir. We wait for that. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.